Hi there everybody, welcome to this week's edition of The Verdict. I think we've got a blockbuster programme for you this time around. Lots of very interesting performances to analyse. In total I'm going to have a look at 6 races. We're going to go to Newbury, we'll go to Haydock, we'll go to Leicester as well. There's all sorts to analyse throughout the programme, and I think we'll start at Newbury because there is a massive hidden effort from one horse on this card. I think he's very good. It was a brilliant card, it was Greenham Day. And you may ask, well, why didn't I look back at this card last week in The Verdict? Well, I've had to have time to look at things in depth because of the conditions that they were running in there. The ground was very soft, and I took some time to compile figures, and figures have thrown something very special up. That was the card. Those were the winners, quite big prices throughout it. But the feature race was the 240. It was the Greenham Stakes. It was won by Shelby. Here's how they bet. Chaldine All the Rage at 5-4, 9-2 Knight, and the story of everything. Third in at 6-1. Shelby 15-2. Look at the money for him. 11s into 15-2, and it was 14s and bigger the rest. And it was Shelby who wins. And to a degree, his effort has been ignored because of what happened in the early part of the race with Chaldine. There's the winner. The second horse was Charin. And the third horse came from 4, the story of everything. And when I first looked at this race, I thought perhaps it was a draw race. Perhaps he needed to be far side to middle. I don't think that's the case. I just think the winner's very good. Here he is, stall 7, Frankie Dettori. Let's have a look and see what happens as they jump out of the gates. Chaldine loses Dettori. His race over. He gets a bump. He goes to his left. Dettori out the right-hand side. And there was loads of focus on that particular incident after the race, when the focus should have been squarely on this horse out in front, Shelby. Now this wasn't what you might think at first. I thought it was a draw race. I thought he got an easy lead. He wasn't challenged early on, he got his own way. It's a race not to be bothered with really. But when you look at the course track sectionals that are available on the Racing TV website, you will see that he's done something very special out there. He set good fractions. There was no hiding place at all. This Greenham is right up there with the best renewals we've seen in the last 10 years. The finishing speed percentage of 97.41 tells us all we need to know about the early gallop, which was very honest. The first half of the race, the second furlong, 11.47. The third furlong, 11.85. The fourth furlong, 11.92. He's taking them along at a strong gallop for the conditions. And then he was the fastest through the final 2 furlongs as well, at 12.86 and 13.97. And that 6th furlong of 12.86 was way too much in the conditions for Charin in theory of everything. You'd like him to have run a 6th furlong much quicker than that, but it's ground dependent, these sectionals. And what he did in the early part of the race was destroy his rivals. He was hard on the bridle when they were being niggled along a long way out, and he strode clear to win in dominant fashion. And this suggests to me that he is very good indeed, and he would be worth his place in the 2,000 guineas at Newmarket, but he's not going to run there. The Poulain might well be the place that they send him. That will probably suit him. He clearly handles cutting the ground, but look at his action. He doesn't bend his knee very much, so he could possibly handle quicker ground. I think he would. But one thing is for sure, he's got a big engine, and Brian Meehan has a serious racehorse on his hands. Is he ground dependent? Well, who knows? We'll find out as we work our way through the season. But it's not inconceivable that he would be a live contender for the St James's Palace Stakes at Royal Ascot. There's the riderless Chaldine upsides. Would Chaldine have beaten him if Dettori had stayed in the plate? Well, it's hard to say yes, because this horse achieved something very special on the clock, set very strong fractions early on, kept rolling and was still the fastest horse through the final 2. I think he's Group 1 material all day long. So I'm very positive about Shelby possibly being a horse who could win a classic, whether it be here or whether it be abroad. Am I as positive about the winner of the Blue Ribbon Trial at Epsom earlier in the week? Let's have a look at the winners on the day. Now, this card was very much ground affected. The ground was heavy, and I think that had a lot of bearing on the winners that we saw out there. Epictetus won the big one. He was the 5-2 on favourite, and he won under Frankie Dettori in reasonable style. But I'm going to ask whether he is a serious contender for the Derby after this Blue Riband trial success. And I'm going to put my neck on the line straight away and say, no, he's not a Derby horse, although he is very good. Let's have a look and see why that could necessarily be the case. He was odds on. Stormbuster was 100 to 30. Hedrianus 9 to 1. 25 to think first. Seat Door 33 to 1. He outran his price. That is for sure. Let's have a look at it from the outset. And Epictetus jumps and adopts the handish position from stall 3. He beats Hadrianus from 2 and Seat Door from stall number 5. There we go. We'll just have a look at where they are. Here he is. Now look at his head carriage. He's a bit keen in the early stages up the hill, just doing a little bit too much in the early part of the race. There's the runner-up, and there's the third. Keep an eye on the third. It's a big run from Harry Eustace's horse here, Seat Door. He wants further, I think, and he will definitely win a nice little race going forward. So up the hill, he's a little bit keen, the eventual winner, Epictetus. They didn't go particularly hard out in front. Overall, I think we had a race that was quite steadily run. The finishing speed percentage just a shade over 103, 103.94%. So it wasn't strongly run, it wasn't far off an even pace. Jockeys, I think, wary of the conditions. Stormbuster took them along in the early part of the race. Epictetus was too good for his rivals, but my contention that he might not be a Derby horse is based on whether he really would stay a mile and a half. Now, a lot of focus is often on whether they handle this track. Well, I think he clearly handled it, no problem. And he's beaten horses who you will not see in the Derby, I would have thought. But his keenness early on is a little bit of a worry, and his finishing effort as well. Now, the winner does dominate the race in the closing stages. His 8th and 9th furlong were pretty good. But his final furlong was not particularly impressive. There's his 8th and 9th furlong. Remember, ground affected, you'd expect him to be running a lot quicker than that, and possibly a sub 12 in there. Unable to do it because of the conditions. 12.17 for furlong 8, 12.93 for furlong 9. So he has dominated this field quicker than all of his rivals through those 2 furlongs. But then, the final furlong, he wasn't the quickest. So what you've got to ask yourself is, was he idling out in front? Was he not being asked for maximum effort? Or was he getting tired and not quite seeing it out? Seat Door, pick him out on the rail. He's the fastest through the final furlong, according to Course Track Sectionals, firing a 14.02. He comes home stronger than the second, Hedrianus, in the striped sleeves, and stronger than the winner as well. Now, it's my contention that Dettori's asked this horse to go and win his race. He's responded to Dettori. He's picked up pretty well, but I don't think he's seeing it out very strongly. Look at Hadrianus running on again, and look at Seat Door staying on strongly too. Now, yes, Dettori is not flat out, he's not asking for maximum effort, but it's got to be up for debate as to whether this horse had much left in the tank and whether a mile and a half would necessarily suit him. His pedigree is worth a look. It suggests this is probably as far as he wants to go. He's by Kingman, so you'd think better ground would suit him, but the other side of his pedigree, he's out of Thistlebird, who's by Selkirk, so the dam side suggests he wants cutting the ground, and the sire side suggests he wants decent ground. So it's in terms of ground and pedigree, there's some extremes in there, but he clearly handles heavy ground, no problem at all. He's clearly very useful too. He's landed the Blue Ribbon trial. They might have a crack at the Derby, but perhaps the French Derby might be the sensible option for this fella going 10 furlongs. And actually, with slightly better ground, he might see out the trip just a little bit better. He's sure to be well placed by Team Gosden, no doubt about that. He's got the job done here, but if he was going to see out a mile and a half, don't you think he really would have hit the line hard rather than these 2 horses in behind closing him down late on? You've got to ask that question to yourself. Did he idle Was the Tory just easy on him, or was he coming to the end of his tether? I'm going end of his tether. I'm saying he's useful, but not the Derby. I think at the end of the season, when we look back at this Haydock meeting from last Saturday, we are going to look back favourably on a lot of the performances that we see there, and we're going to see another one now. This was the 3:15. Now this was the fillies novice. It was over a mile. Stormy Sea was 10-11 and 3-1 market value. LeMay was 7-2. Any price, the rest of them 20-1. And we see another really good performance. I was mightily impressed by Gregory, and I am just as impressed by Stormy Sea, the odds-on favourite, who obliged here and came out of stall number 3. This is a very good performance, and she has beaten LeMay from 2, just inside there, just inside her, and outside, the wide outside is market value. Here we go then. Why is this so good? It's the turn of foot that she's got. She's beautifully bred. She's a half sister to Baybridge, who ran 3rd at the weekend in the Gannet. Ran pretty well to be 3rd to a very serious horse there. And here she is travelling up under Richard Kingscote. She's trained by Sir Michael Stout towards the 4 in a race that was, it was quite steadily run. It wasn't a crawl like we saw in the Gregory race, but it was quite steady. The finishing speed percentage, it wasn't too bad, 108.69, so they haven't got mad out in front, but I think that's due to the turn of foot she's got and how quickly she's able to finish the race. Finish it 8.69% quicker than she ran the rest of it. Yes, she's well positioned, but she's miles better than these fillies, and I was hugely impressed by this. The figures, well, they're very telling indeed. Her final 3 furlongs, 35.01. We're getting into that territory now, out on the track. She sat 2nd. Now watch her blitz away from her rivals when Richard Kingscote asks her to go. 11.5 she goes in the 6th, then in the 7th, 11.51, and then through the 8th furlong, 11.99. Here we go. She's firing that 11.51 now, and she's still on the bridle. Look at the others, all under the cosh. Kingscote's going to say go now at the 2 to the 1. She's going to fire in another 11.5 second furlong now, whilst Kingscote says go. Now she picks up, head down, and this is all over in a matter of strides. And he is not giving her a hard time. He's had a look at the screen, he's looked to his right as well, and she has cleared away from her rivals in imperious fashion. Now, I just was impressed by the numbers. Yes, visually, your eye tells you she looks pretty good, but the numbers say she has got a tremendous turn of foot. She's quickened up in fine style. This was a race that Nashwa won last year, and she went up on to win the Nassau Stakes, of course. Didn't quite get home in the Oaks, but won the Nassau. Not sure this filly will go further than 10 furlongs. And she has had a wind operation. She had a wind operation in the off-season prior to this, her first run back. Well, it's clearly worked, and she looks like a really bright prospect for the Sir Michael Stout team. You've got to love horses that can cruise and then quicken. There's no way she could be caught by horses who are ridden behind her, trying to close her down when she runs 11.5 and 11.51. That is a smart turn of foot, and there's more in the tank you'd have thought. I don't know where Sir Michael Stout's going to go. She has no entries at the moment, but I think up in class is an absolute certainty for her, and given her pedigree, she could be very good indeed. She, rather like Gregory, could be Royal Ascot bound. Let's have a look at a handicap at Haydock on Saturday afternoon that is going to work out like a dream, I think. It was a 7 furlong contest. 3-1 favourite was Montasib, Biggles 4-1, 5-1 Rainbow Fire, Boardman 11-2, 6-1 Guido, Roscollin 11s and 16-1, and bigger the rest. It's no exaggeration to say that most of the horses in this race will win this season. I think this is a very good handicap, really competitive, and it's interesting how it panned out. Let's have a look at where they came from in this contest. Your winner was Rainbow Fire, came out of stall number 9, so drawn a little bit wide. Guido from 2-1 at Musselburgh last time up. Biggles came from 1, and Montasib came from 11. Now I want to concentrate on the winner here, but also an alert for the 4th horse, We'll highlight him in the run, but this is a massive eye catcher, not just obvious to the eye, but on the figures as well, and we'll come to him in a moment. The first thing to say is this is a steadily run race. Guido getting his own way in front, and Biggles very keen at this point. 106.55 the finishing speed percentage of the winner, so it was slower than an even gallop. Here we go. We'll stop them there just to have a look at their track position. Now, Guido, who finishes second, is out in front. The winner is in here in those pale blue colours, Rainbow Fire. There's Guido second. There's Biggles, who's third. There's Montasib, who finished fourth. Spotting them what? From a wide draw, he's been dropped in by Kieran Fallon. 10, 15 lengths, something like that. And the important thing to note is not his position, it's pace that matters. And the pace of the race was 106.55. So they've gone steady and then quickened up 6.55% quicker in the last 3 furlongs than the rest of the race for this horse. So he's running faster in the last 3 furlongs than he did in the rest of the race. And Montasib is being asked to close him down, close down a horse who is sprinting in front of him. He was set an impossible task, but watch what he does in the closing stages. First 3 home then, always handy. There's Guido in front, finishes second. Biggles in second, he finishes back in third. Now Rainbow Fire quickens up in very good style here. He quickens nicely, going through 11.04 through the 5th furlong, so he's just doing that now. But in behind, Montasib fired through the same furlong 10.83, and Montasib was quicker through the final 3 furlongs than all of the first 3 in front of him. He came home stronger in the final 3 furlongs than those in front of him. He was just set a really impossible task, but look where he finishes, right on the heels of the principals, who were ridden a little bit more sensibly in the closing stages. That was an impressive finishing effort. His final 3 furlongs, 34.13, quicker than the other principals. He's absolutely flown home, and he's got previous to back up the ability he's flashed here. He was 5th in the Buckingham Palace Stakes at Royal Ascot last year. He probably wants decent ground. I think Ascot will definitely suit him. Another furlong would suit him as well, and he has proved that he stays a mile in the past. He's a massive eye catcher, Montasib here. Not sure where he's going to go, but he could possibly head to the Victoria Cup at Ascot. And I'm just going to throw one other thing into the mix here. He got hampered a couple of times as well when he was trying to get a run. It wasn't bad, it wasn't momentum stopping, but he had to be switched a couple of times too, and in another couple of strides he would definitely have been second. Rainbow Fire's finishing effort, really good. He quickened up in just a shade over 11 seconds, but Montasib from much further back went 10.83, and he fired the fastest 3 furlongs easily compared to the rest, and he would have won if he had a better track position earlier on. Get him in your racing TV tracker. You cannot afford to miss Montasib. So after some very interesting performances at Haydock Park on fast ground, we're going to return to pretty soft conditions at Leicester at the weekend for the big race of the day on Saturday, the King Richard III Stakes. Let's have a look at the winners for that day, and it was very much ground affected, this card. Spanish Phoenix going in even money favourite in the first, was a shock in the second. Favourites featured pretty highly on the card. Coco Bear was a favourite, and so was Silestar. But Almabeer took the feature event evens. That was the 305. Did so under William Buick for the William Haggis team, and it was a nice performance from him. I thought it was worth highlighting what he achieved here on the clock and visually as well. Let's have a look at the start then. Stall number 1 is where he comes from, so he's right down on the inside. He beats Wob 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 from stall number 3, and Maysong from 6 was back in 3rd place. When you look at the sections for this on the Racing TV website, be aware that they're not what you would expect. That's because of the ground, which was very soft, heavy, but as you can see, it was a drying day. It was a nice warm day, so it ended up being pretty tacky ground in the end, and getting home was a problem for quite a lot of horses. So Wob 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 just took them along at a steady enough gallop in the early part of the race and got the run of the race. But I think William Buick on the winner was well aware that he had to sit handy. He wasn't far off the gallop in the early stages. There's Wob 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 in second. So the first two were always close up. And it was quite steady according to the course track sectionals in the early part of the race. For example, the third furlong, Wob 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 took them through in 15.11. So they're not going anywhere near even 12s, which you could expect on decent ground from decent horses. So they've gone steady. Jockeys wary of the ground. The sixth furlong, 13.3, and the seventh furlong, 13.36. So you can see they have really picked up after that pedestrian early part of the race. And the winner clearly handles soft conditions very well. He fires up 13.3 in the seventh furlong, which just about seals the deal, and he wins quite cosily. Now, I do think he's probably ground dependent, this horse. I think he wants soft ground. He's by Frankel, and look at his knee action. Hits the ground pretty hard. He's going to go and chase down Wob 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 now. Nothing can get into it from off the pace. And he runs on resolutely in the closing stages. Both his wins have come on very soft ground. And whilst the numbers he posts here are nothing particularly impressive, he did it in very good style, and he's won a shade comfortably, I think, in the end. And there's probably more to come from him, perhaps. And now that the ground, we hope, is going to dry up a little bit, the autumn might be the time for him. He might be quite interesting in a minor pattern race come the autumn, but he's sure to be well placed by his shrewd trainer. This wasn't a particularly strong contest, but he's been able to run down a horse who got his own way out in front by firing those two furlongs of 13.3 and 13.6, which is the best he could do in the conditions. Look, they finished well strung out, despite the fact that there was quite a steady early gallop, and that is just a window to what the conditions were like at Leicester. But he's a taking type, isn't he? And he's got a good attitude. He gallops on resolutely for William Buick, and probably had a little bit of the tank. Buick's not going for everything in the closing stages, and I think he was worth highlighting as a horse. So I would be looking at particularly for a little race or two in the autumn, because I do think he is ground dependent. He definitely wants some cut. So that's it for the verdict this week. I think we've highlighted some very nice horses here. Gregory and Stormy Seas, who won those two novice stakes at Haydock, they are definitely worth following. They're better than your average novice winner by some way. Stormy Seas got an electric turn of foot. And Isaac Shelby, don't give up on him. He is much better than people were saying after the race, after he took the Greenham Stakes at Newbury. I think he could be very good. He's just about the best performance we've seen so far this flat season. That was put up by Isaac Shelby. And don't forget Montasib, the big eye catcher of the week. That's it for the verdict. See you next time around.
Subscribe to Racing TV's YouTube channel now to watch more great races like this.